Good morning, all. My name is Buck Malick. I'm a resident of the town of Hudson, and I'm the chairman of the St. Croix County Zoning Board of Adjustment at this time. It is 10 o'clock, and today is September 22nd, 2022. And we are in the Government Center in Hudson, St. Croix County, room 1284. These are all in accordance with the public notice that was printed in the official newspaper. Apparently, if anybody has reason to think that it was not properly published, do speak up about that right now. Good. It would be the first time in my 15 years or so that there was a problem, but it pays to be thorough with such matters. Therefore, I'm going to call to order this regular September meeting of the Zoning Board of Adjustment, and I'm going to ask the members of the Board of Adjustment and the county staff people who are present to identify themselves. In part, that'll get us going with our microphones and also establish whether we have a quorum. Mr. Peterson?
Dave Peterson, citizen member, Town of Kinnickinnick.
David Nickham, Town of Baldwin, citizen member.
Greg Caljohn, St. Croix County Board Supervisor, District 14.
Heather Eames, Corporation Counsel for St. Croix County.
Ellen Denzer, St. Croix County Community Development Director.
Mike Wozniak, St. Croix County Land Use Administrator.
And our notes are being taken by Julie Peterson, who will also help if help is needed with respect to using the audiovisual equipment. We do have a quorum. The board has minutes from the meeting of August 30. Board members, do you have any reason to think those minutes are inaccurate and need to be corrected? If not, they will stand approved, deemed the same as if they'd been voted upon. Today we have two matters for public hearings, and I propose to take them in the very same order in which they were published in the agenda. First would be the matter of the Apple River Hideaway then, and secondly would be the matter of the garage in the Riverway zone in the town of Croix. Mr. Wozniak, I take it that you are making the presentation on the Apple River Hideaway matter?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I'll be giving an overview of the staff report.
Very good.
You have on your agenda a scheduled hearing to consider a revocation of conditional use permits, CUP 5-91 and CUP A-22-84, this is consideration of two CUPs formerly known as special exception permits that pertain to the Apple River Hideaway operation under the ownership of Hideaway LLC at 712 170th Avenue in Somerset, in the town of Somerset. I'll note that each action would be on each CUP would be a separate action, or you would need to recognize your intention on regarding each of these CUPs. However, one staff report has been prepared to cover this, and a variety of background materials were provided on this, as noted below on this slide. And I would note that also at your last meeting where you made a decision to schedule this hearing and consider actions on these two CUPs, there was a variety of materials provided for you as part of that meeting packet. I would note that the property in question is located in both the southwest quarter and the southwest quarter of the northeast quarter of Section 2 in the town of Somerset. The property in question is located within both the county's R1 residential zone district and the C1 commercial district under our zoning ordinance, Chapter 15. The size of the site in question is approximately 40 acres. I'll note that Hideaway LLC has additional land holdings, but as best as I can determine, the permits apply to approximately overall a 40-acre portion of the site. I'll get into that a little more with some maps momentarily. The action you're being asked to consider is revocation, again, of CUP 5-91 and CUP A-22-84. The numbering or conventions changed over the years, so you might see there's not total consistency there. And this is pursuant to Section 15.770 of the county zoning ordinance, which basically has provisions for considering revocation of permits. Included with your packet, the staff report that I'm running through, the conditional use, shouldn't be conditional use, well, the conditional use permit decision documents, I should say, on this, and then supporting documentation, the 20 items I referenced. This is a map that shows the areas within Section 2 in the town of Somerset, with the site area outlined in blue here for the Hideaway property. And I would note, relative to the zoning districts I previously mentioned, a large portion of the site is in the county's R1 residential district, and up in the northeast corner of the property, there is approximately 4.7 acres that is commercial zoned in the county's, currently in the county's C1 zone district. I'm going to just note, this is a map that's actually from the Hideaway's website that they use to, I presume, let people know the layout of the facilities and where the campsites are located. On this map, they show 288 campsites, and there's 5 pit toilets, 3 cabins, the Riverfront Bar Stage, or formerly known as the Apple Eatery, which is up in the far northeast corner, and the center bar and a concession and tube shed, and also a large stage kind of located down in the lower or central part of the campground, a shower building, a tubing parking lot, overflow parking areas, volleyball courts, and again, this is approximately on 40 acres. I'll give an overview of some history on this site. Conditional use permit was approved in 1985 to allow a tubing operation. This permit was rescinded by the Board of Adjustment at a revocation hearing, much like what you're doing today, in December of 1990. And The records we have indicate that the reason for that is that permit only provided for tubing and not camping and concerts, and so it was revoked, and then the owner-operator at the time, Steve Montbrand, subsequently applied for a subsequent permit. So that ended up being authorized with approval of a CUP in 1991 that was, again, requested by Steve Montbrand. And that permit, formally called special exception permit again, is for tubing on the Apple River camping and 2 outdoor open-air concerts. The food concession bar known as the Apple Eatery was authorized by a conditional use permit approved by the Board of Adjustment on May 22nd, 1984. This facility is located at the far eastern edge, as I've already noted, of the property. The property for the food concession stand was first leased from the abutting Sinclair property by Hideaway LLC approximately 2010, and then subsequently acquired in 2013. I'll note that a liquor license was granted by the town of Somerset for the current operation in 2010 and has subsequently been renewed. And a variety of supporting documents were provided to the board in the packet documenting liquor license history. I'll note regarding, I just referenced the supporting documents. There were a variety of materials provided that document the music events, DJ-hosted events that have been held several times a season in recent years at the site, as well as some of the other history of it, including decision documents for the 1991 CUP and the 1984 CUP. I'd just like to show a few pictures, not too many, that give a little perspective of some of the areas we're talking about that are areas of concern in terms of the activity on the site. The event tent stage area at what was known as the Apple Eatery, or I currently referred to, at least on the maps of the Hideaway, as the Riverfront Bar stage. There is a metal building just to the right of this photo. You also have a stage area and kind of a patio with an event tent during at least during the summer season, covering it over. You can see the view of the river from that location. It is in a shoreland overlay district. It does sit up on a bit of a rise, but again, is within 300 feet of the ordinary high watermark of the Apple River. This is another photo that is in that central area of the campground. It includes a large stage. There's some buildings on the left side of the photo that include what's labeled as the central bar and a concession building. I think there's a tubing storage building there as well. And then there's, you can see just to the right of the stage area, there are a couple of two of the three cabins that were installed in the property, and I'll talk a little more about those as I proceed in the presentation. Some additional background information on this. The campground plans provided with the 1991 CUP application proposed 100 campsites, and there are maps that were submitted to the state DSPS and that were specifically showed 100 campsites. I'll note that St. Croix County Public Health records show the operation has 2 approved licenses, a campground license for up to 100 sites and That was provided with your packet materials, and a license for retail food serving meals dash or slash simple is the way the license is labeled. The Apple River Hideaways website includes a campground map, again, that identifies 288 campsites. The county has no record of any subsequent CUP amendment to expand the campground beyond the originally approved 100 campsites. So I'm just putting that out there, that it seems to have changed and evolved over the years since the original approval in 1991. In addition, 3 cabins have been added to the site. The county addressed compliance issues regarding the 75-foot setback minimum from the ordinary high water mark of Apple River in 2020, and I think they were moved back. But I have not found any record of any amendment to the CUP that was applied for or approved to allow the cabins. So I'll just note that. Regarding complaints and violations, there have been various complaints from area residents and town officials in recent years, starting in 2018 and continuing through this summer of 2022. Personally, I've had quite a bit of contact with nearby residents or property owners and town officials since last summer or late last summer, fall, and through the season this year. Complaints have been focused on music events, concerts, and DJ-hosted music light shows, including concerns about noise, number of events, and late-night hours. And I'll note that during the past several years, music events have exceeded the 2 concerts per season authorized by the 1991 CUP. And it's my understanding, in talking to Mr. Cappers, Mike Cappers, the owner of the property involved with Hideaway LLC, that there's some regular entertainment that maybe are beyond the bigger events that on various nights as well, or days or evenings. But certainly there have been records of several multi-day events per year for a period of years. Also, the evening ending time of 11 p.m. Called for in the 1991 permit has been frequently exceeded, with music events extending as late as 2 a.m. And that's both from accounts of local residents and town officials, but also from postings on the Hideaway's website or Facebook page that actually show the schedules of performances. The evidence of these permit violations has been found on the business's, like I said, the business's website and Facebook page, and from submitted photos, I'll add, that were part of the packet materials provided to the board. Regarding the complaints and violations, the large stage area oriented to the east, again in the central part of the campground site, was constructed in that area. My understanding would be as part of the original 1991 permit. Another stage and event tent were added at the concession bar. I showed you a couple pictures of that. The stage at that location is oriented to the west. There is no record of any permit approving the stage or event tent, or any evidence of approval to conduct music events or nightly entertainment at the concession slash bar, Riverfront Bar, or the former Apple Eatery. A condition of the 1991 CUP required that speakers be oriented east towards the trees. Now, I'd further note that advertising materials for music events, festivals, events have referenced multiple stages with performances from midday to beyond midnight. So that seems to be, with the main events, multi-day events that have been done out there, that's been the norm. The county does not have noise standards. However, the number and frequency of concerts, music events, and the hours of operation are addressed under the county zoning authority and existing permits. Now, just talking briefly about the Apple Eatery, the town of Somerset approved a reserved Class B liquor license for the Hideaway LLC on April 7th, 2010. The town's records indicate this license was approved for the Eatery facility located at the east end of the property that is now part of the Apple River Hideaway. Between 2010 and 2013, that portion of the site was being leased from George Sinclair. I'll note that in 2013, a change of zone and a land division occurred to adjust a small area of commercial zoning to make the zone align with the actual location of the building. I think there was an area zoned commercial, but it didn't correspond to where the Apple Eatery building was actually located. And that facilitated a transfer of property between George Sinclair and Hideaway LLC. And we note attached supporting documentation. We have a full-size version in our files and of the survey and other information about this, but in this slide, it shows a excerpt of that. And again, this is a 4.7 acre area. The actual building is over in this area, and there was a stage and patio area added to that. And there's a sanitary system located probably just outside of the shoreland overlay, but most of this 4.7 acres is within the 300 feet from the ordinary high of the Apple River and in the shoreland overlay district. I just note, in terms of comments from the town of Somerset, as I previously noted, I've had a lot of interaction with conversations, emails, even a site visit with town officials. And the town board of the town of Somerset discussed the matter of this consideration of revocation at its September 7th, 2022 town board meeting. Following a discussion by the board, and we've included a copy of draft meeting minutes with your packet materials. But action was taken to support, by the board, to support St. Croix County's Board of Adjustments revocation of the conditional use permits for Apple River Hideaway. Basically, the sentiment we got from the board was that they felt they haven't been operating in compliance, and revoking the permits and allowing the owner-operator to apply for approvals and be subject to today's rules would be best serve the public. Regarding enforcement action to date, earlier this year, we corresponded with Mr. Cappers and included the 1991 permit requirements. The further research subsequently showed the history of the Apple Eatery and the earlier action on a separate CUP. And then that property, of course, was later added to the Apple River Hideaway holdings. Mike Cappers, owner-operator, responded that he had one weekend planned, June 17th through 19th, earlier in the year here, and indicated that speakers would be pointed east towards the large hill and ending by 11 p.m. I just note that several multi-day concerts were conducted in June, July, and August of this year, and likewise the activity in prior years, going several years back, seems to be similar. I just call out that the music events held in 2022 include one that was called Apple River Hideaway Digital Music Festival, June 17th through the 19th, Floaty Fest, July 1 through 4, and Apple River Music Weekend and Beer Olympics, August 19th through the 21st. And public schedules for these events and complaints received indicate that the music activities extended beyond 11 p.m. In addition, Mr. Capris has stated he regularly has music at the Riverfront Bar stage located at the east end of the property. Conversation with me, he indicated that he has country music there. The Board of Adjustment discussion of violations and consideration of revocation of the 91 permit CUP. I'll note that a condition of the 91 CUP reads as follows. Violation of any part of this special exception permit will result in the right to hold a revocation hearing. Hence, that's why you're holding this hearing and considering these actions today. A determination was made by Board of Adjustment at the August 25th meeting that sufficient evidence of noncompliance of Apple River Hideaway in respect to limitation regarding the number of concerts that may be held, which is 2 according to the 91 permit, and hours they may be conducted between 10 a.m. and 11 p.m. exists to justify holding a revocation hearing at this meeting. And to further review complaints and evidence of failure to comply with required conditions. Regarding procedures for revocation of the permit, in Chapter 15, the County Zoning Ordinance, Section 15.770.2 reads, as noted on this slide, where a conditional use permit appeal or variance is approved subject to specified conditions, and where those conditions are not complied with, the Board of Adjustment may conduct a hearing following procedures similar to those followed in considering the granting of the conditional use, appeal, or variance. Finding of noncompliance with the conditions originally imposed is ground for revocation. Just to summarize, based on Community Development Department staff research of the Apple River Hideaway current operations, revocation of the 91 and 1984 CUPs is warranted. Of course, this is before you hear any further evidence or arguments that the applicant may make, so bear that in mind. The owner-operator of the Apple River Hideaway would have the option of reapplying for appropriate approvals to operate under revised conditions. Determinations would have to be made regarding applicability of current zoning classifications and how the various uses conducted at the Apple River Hideaway may best be regulated under provision of applicable county regulations, including zoning, shoreland, overlay district, floodplain, and sanitary regulations. And of course, I would just add that the operation is subject to licensing requirements to meet through public health to meet DSPS requirements, and also there could be, if modifications are made to the operation, there could be requirements for stormwater permitting through Department of Natural Resources, just as an aside. We've referenced 14 findings of fact and conclusions of law in the staff report. Some of this is just information about the property, so I'm not going to read through all of this verbatim. Again, the consideration is to consider revocation of CUP case number 591, and also I would note the 6 conditions we've referenced in the findings that were part of that CUP. And specifically, the camping was to be per state regulations and state approvals, and furnish the county a copy of state-approved plans. As I had noted, those plans that we have on file show 100 campsites. The campground have a quiet time between 10 p.m. and 8 a.m. where gates are closed for admission, and then specifically, condition number 4, concerts be allowed 2 times per year, provided speakers are turned toward the east, toward trees, and attendance be restricted to less than 1,000 people. Concert hours be permitted between the hours of 10 a.m. and 11 p.m. I would note that the number of events and the hours are at issue. I haven't had any way to ascertain or determine whether the restriction to 1,000 people at the events has been adhered to. Mr. Cappers has stated that he's been under that limit, but again, I haven't really had any way to document or confirm that. And specifically, I'll call out the last condition again. Violation of any part of the special exception permit will result in the right to hold a revocation hearing, which the board is doing today. Additional findings include that we note substantial evidence exists based on statements of town officials, complaints from area property owners, and records of the music concert events from the Hideaway's Facebook page that for a period of many years, numerous music concert events have been held annually, exceeding the 2 concerts per year under CUP case number 5-91, condition number 4, and also the hours allowed for the concerts have been exceeded regularly, with records showing events being held as late as 2 a.m. in the early morning hours. The CUP A-2284 approved in 1984 by the Board of Adjustment authorized a concession stand known as the Apple Eatery. The action was to grant approval of the concession stand as it was considered a good use of the land, and at completion it shall meet with town, county, and state requirements. Well, I'll note also that meeting minutes from that meeting of the Board of Adjustment in 1984 included a paragraph that stated, Mr. George Sinclair presented his request to have a concession stand on the Apple River. This is not a beer garden, because it seemed like it was billed at that, but when it was approved, it was not approved as that, but rather just a food concession. And then I would add that there was a liquor license, a trial liquor license granted for the month of June in 1992. It's less clear, and maybe the town could clarify this, what transpired between 1992 and 2010. But in 2010, the town subsequently issued a reserve Class B retailer's license for sale of fermented malt beverages and intoxicating liquor, and documentation of the liquor licensing history has been provided. Now, I'll note that the Hideaway website indicates 2 bars, a central bar and a riverfront bar, or what was known as the Apple Eatery. No county records exist to indicate that either CUP 5-91 or CUP A-22-84 were amended to allow bars on the subject property. Further, in terms of these findings, the plans provided with the CUP in 91 included a stage located in the central part of the campground. No stage or patio were identified as part of the Apple Eatery location authorized in the 84 CUP, and in subsequent years a patio or stage were added. We don't seem to have any permitting records of that. It is in the shoreland area, and would likely, at a minimum, require a land use permit from the county. The Eatery site is located, again, it's in that shoreland area, and we don't have any records of any subsequent permitting. Now, during the summer months, the patio area is covered with an event tent which extends the usage. This is just more, if you look at the aerial photos, they're taken early spring. You may not see that event tent. That's the point I'm making with that point. I'd just like to outline what we've laid out as options for Board of Adjustment consideration. Option one would be to take no action. Community development staff and Corporation Council would continue to enforce existing CUPs and applicable ordinance provisions by all means available. Option number two would be revoke CUP case number 5-91 and CUP A22-84 based upon the finding of fact and conclusions of law included in the staff report, the 1 through 14 that I just went through. The property owner Hideaway LLC could subsequently reapply for approvals that may include rezoning, conditional use permits, and land use permits to bring the operation into compliance and allow, and also allow for public input. Now, I would note that amending the existing CUPs to bring the operation into compliance is not a viable option because the current zoning districts, R1 and C1, do not allow bars, restaurants, or outdoor entertainment facilities, and neither the county board nor the Board of Adjustment should approve changes that increase the nonconformity of an existing nonconforming use. Again, prior to what you hear today from the applicant or public that may provide additional supporting information for your decision, community development staff recommend the Board of Adjustment revoke conditional use permit case number 5-91 and CUP A-22-84 based upon the findings of fact and conclusions of law 1 through 14 in the staff report, as revocation and subsequent reapplication of appropriate permits with conditions will best serve the public interest. There's a lot to unpack here. Staff's done a lot of research. Certainly, I can try to answer questions the Board of Adjustment may have, and I encourage you to hear from Mr. Kappers or his representatives, and also the public on this. And I know that town officials are here as well and may wish to comment from the town of Somerset.
Board members, do you have questions for Mr. Wozniak at this stage? As we usually do, then we'll hear first from one position, and then we'll hear from the other position, and then we'll hear from those people who aren't necessarily taking a position for or against the revocation of these licenses. So, is there anyone in the room who would like to speak in favor of the proposal to revoke these licenses? Anybody who, for example, has citizen complaints or represents the town board's position that revocation is the proper decision? We'll hear from you now. Please first sign our oath that your testimony will be the truth, and then step up to the microphone. At this point, I won't impose time limits. If this goes for a great long time, I may do that. But for the moment, we'll start off with those people who wish to speak, as Mr. Wozniak did for the staff, that these licenses should be revoked. Is there anybody who wishes to speak that way? Okay, tell us who you are and where you reside, and then give us your testimony, please.
This is Scott Miller. I live right across the street from the Hideaway Campground. We built our house there about 16 years ago. When the Montbryants had the property, I believe they operated within the conditional use permit. Really had no issues with the camping. Don't recall they had any events. Until Mr. Cappers bought it, then he started putting his own spin on how he's going to run his operation down there. As far as the camping and tubing, I really have no issues with that. You can hear the kids having fun down there, not a problem, usually during the day. The whole problem that started was the concerts at night, going from past 11 o'clock till 2 a.m. As a matter of fact, there was one instance which kind of started and kicked this whole thing off, October 17th of last year on a Sunday evening. I go to work at 4 in the morning. This concert went on till 2 a.m. Called the sheriff's department. They did nothing but say that he had a permit to run his operation, that there's nothing they could do. So whatever recommendations you guys make, I'd like to see the sheriff's department get involved too. And when they get a complaint, that they follow through on it, because this is bullshit. I'm really tired of it. This last August 25th, a Thursday night, another work night, there was another concert down there or something, music going until 12 o'clock by the time it finally quit. I've been inconvenienced a long time here. This is just getting out of hand. But I'm not going to sit here and just complain. I have solutions too. I think Mr. Cappers, if he could put his money where his mouth is, he could apply for a permit and maybe build a building down there and house his concerts inside the building. Then it wouldn't affect the neighborhood. You know, I'm just a resident, a hardworking resident. I like my peace and quiet in my neighborhood and my property. That's why I'm here today. You have any questions for me?
Board members? No? Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Yep.
I'm Ed Schockner, the Somerset Town Chairman. We've had numerous complaints on this issue, and I think Mike did a really good job of explaining it. As he noted, in our town board meeting, we motioned to revoke all the conditional use permits, and if he wants to reapply, he can do so. So I don't know if anybody has any more information that they'd like to ask me or anything, but
I am curious if you have knowledge of complaints to the sheriff's office in addition to Mr. Miller's, and if the sheriff's office has taken any enforcement action that's come to your attention, Mr. Schockner.
I personally don't. I've just heard rumors. I don't know of any of that police reports.
Okay. And with respect to adjacent town roads, have you had any issues that you wish to bring to our attention?
As far as the town roads, you said?
Yes.
As far as accidents or anything, you mean?
Accidents, trash, any of the things that might accompany large group activities?
As far as the town road, no.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else who wishes to speak? All right, and let's hear from those who would like to speak against revoking, who feel that the permit should not be revoked.
My name is Mike Cappers with the Apple River Hideaway. It's kind of a lot to digest, but just starting with Mr. Miller's comment of having a concert October 22nd and 23rd of last year. I was
28th.
What's that?
28th.
28th. I was in Vegas, and there was nobody at the campground at that point. So it was and as far as last weekend, we're completely shut down. So we didn't have any events there last weekend. We can talk to the people that that live there.
Didn't call that out. Called out August 27th. I believe it was on 30 days.
That was the day Mr. Wozniak went out there, and we were completely closed down.
Yeah, you're a liar.
We get blamed a lot for whenever either the Somerset Amphitheater has music or River's Edge has music. We get blamed a lot. Lenny Germain can tell you, your music is loud, and I'm literally standing next to the speaker that are completely off. So the way the sound travels down the river, a lot of people think it's our music when it's not, including you, Mr. Miller. as far as what Mr. Wozniak was saying, we only had one concert, one event. Just because I put something on a Facebook page, an event page, saying we're going to do fireworks or a floaty fest isn't an event. We weren't doing tubing at the time, so we had people tying off with floaties on picnic tables. It was not a concert, was not an event. We had the Digital Music Festival, June 17th through the 19th was our only event, and at the main stage, music was shut down at 11, and we had smaller speakers on other stages. And we had 0 noise complaints to the Sheriff's Department. And unlike Mr. Miller says the Sheriff's Department doesn't do anything, they're a professional agency. When somebody calls dispatch, there's a record. You can look through it. I asked Scott Knutson to be here. He wasn't able to be here, but he has 0 problems with our events, and we have almost no calls for service, whether it's noise complaints, EMS calls, injuries, anything like that. We run a really good business for the number of tourism people that we bring into our community. So to me, we've been going, other than shutting, I didn't even know about shutting the gate at 10 o'clock, but we do keep people staffed at the gate till 2, 3 in the morning on Fridays and sometimes a little less on Saturdays. But I've never shut the gate, because to me, we have people come in from Iowa, South Dakota, North Dakota, Canada, and if they're going to get in after 10 o'clock, we don't want them just sitting outside of a gate waiting till the next day. We help get those people in. I could go on and on, but literally, Mike's trying to say, Mr. Wozniak's trying to say we have all these concerts. We literally had 1 this year, 2 last year, and everything else we do, even like the beer Olympics, the bar games, the whole concept since I've taken over in 2010 is to get people in on Friday and have them leave on Sunday. We don't want people drinking and driving. We don't want single-day concerts. We don't want single-day tubing. So we do little gimmick things like we call it a festival, but it's just some music at the one bar, which, like I said, there's no neighbors complaining. One neighbor complaining who's best friends with one of my competitors, and as far as I know, they're still not ever there on the weekends to even see if we're loud or hear if we're loud. There are a couple other neighbors here that are going to speak on our behalf on the way it used to be and the way it is now. And I'd like to think that because of my years in law enforcement, I have been able to make the campground and the river a safer place. And the tragic incident that happened a couple months ago had nothing to do with any of our tubers. Nothing. The 3 different parties involved had nothing to do with it, and it was tragic, and nothing we could do to stop it. We did everything we could do to help, including setting up perimeters, getting a drone up for the Sheriff's Department, getting a boat ready, and we make a lot of money in donations to the food shelf. We do good things for the community, and this is all kind of, it's overkill, and it's sad that people want to, instead of increase tourism and business that's running successfully, that's not having problems, and try to just shut us down. Do you guys have any questions for me on anything? Because literally we haven't, other than putting event pages on Facebook, that's not an event, it's not a concert. Anything that we've had multiple stages on, we followed the rules, other than shutting a gate. Because I didn't even know that was on there, and to me that seems kind of silly that you lock people out of a gate.
How late do your concerts last?
The concerts, when we have done the one digital music festival, the main stage where like the bigger speakers are, we're done at 11. The bar stage, the bar goes until 2:30, but we usually shut the music down by 1:30, and then let people linger out, and they have to be out of the gates before 2:30. And then it makes it sound like, Mr. Wozniak made it sound like we're just going against county zoning or whatever. And when I first got this liquor license, I had to rezone it from commercial to commercial. I came and saw you guys, spent $1,100 just because they had to remove some of the language that didn't make sense in there anymore and was illegal. They rezoned 2 acres to commercial and moved it, but they moved it to the wrong spot, is where it's like in the volleyball courts and not actually even at the building, but they were fine with it. The town board gave us a liquor license. We've had 0 fines in, 13 or 14 seasons. No underage drinking problems, no allegations of anything, no problems to speak of. And then, and as far as the 100 sites and 288 sites, when the county was going through a few years ago and redoing their ordinances, they had us give them an updated map, which is there, so they knew exactly how many sites we had. We went through everything, and they said, just get us however many sites you have, so you're grandfathered in that way. And now here we are, like, you know, like I'm trying to add 188 sites, and that's, it's been the same number of sites for 20 or 30 years. Not that we ever fill that many up, because that would be great if we did, but we don't. But we're not bad people, we're not in violation, and it would be a shame if you guys took these 2 events away. And if I could just say one more thing, I received the letter from Mr. Wozniak in the spring, and you can ask him. I probably reached out, emailed him at least 6 times to try to meet with him. I was emailing him to try to meet with him, explain how the operation worked, what an event was, what we do, how we do. He shows up the week before Memorial Weekend on a time where we're dead, and I wasn't even there at that time because it was early on a Friday. But other than that, I've been reaching out saying, hey, let's meet. What's your schedule like? And none of this should have even went this far. All we had to do is, if he could have found time in his busy schedule, any day throughout the summer, I made myself available, and we wouldn't even be here.
I was interested in the time again. If we could go back to that. So what you're saying is the comments that it goes till 2 in the morning, those comments are incorrect?
Of the main stage or any other things where we've had like the concerts in the past, those shut down early, and then we go to where like the bar stage is, and it's small speakers. I mean, Mr. Wozniak can tell you the speakers he saw over the years, we shrunk them down, but literally like no bigger than something you'd find in your home. And like I said, the whole thing was to get people to go there and not drink and drive, you know, to get there on Friday, set up their camp, leave Sunday, and that's why we don't have the fights, we don't have drunk drivers, we don't have accidents, we don't have the problems some of the other campgrounds do because of the way we've handled it.
So that is correct. They go till 2 in the morning.
The music at the bar will go, it's not like a concert till 2 in the morning, it's music at the bar.
When did you make that application for that change?
What's that, sir?
When did you make that application for that change?
In 2010 is when I paid $10,000 to the township for the reserve liquor license.
Which way are the speakers facing?
The stage, and it's not a permanent stage, it's a floating stage. It's part of the tent itself, which is a movable tent, and it's the 4x4s of the part of the stage is just sitting on the ground, so it's 100% movable. And I'm a little confused because I was always told it's 75 feet from the high water mark, that it's buildable, and we're closer to 300 feet from the high water mark. But the stage faces east or faces west, but there's a whole big tree line that goes off to the left. We face the speakers there. before when we had bigger speakers. Now that they're little tiny little things, there's like 8 or 10 little speakers on the post all facing in, so you can't even hear it down next to that next pit toilet or the campsites next to you.
So the concerts, maybe there's a breakdown in terminology here, concerts, events, music, I don't know what we're defining for sure, but when there's a concert, which way are the speakers facing?
On the main stage, the east.
I don't know where.
Yep, to the east.
Two concerts,
Yep,
which way are the speakers facing?
That to the east. That stage has been there since I think 1987 or something like that. But it faces the east, which is a big hillside of trees.
Okay, and then the Apple Eatery or whatever it's called now, which way are the speakers facing?
Into that same hillside. So the stage faces the west, but the speakers, when we had bigger speakers, they face that same tree line towards it would be the southeast.
Southeast and not east, okay.
But like I said, right now, if you look back at one of the pictures, you can see how small these speakers are. They're literally small. You'd have bigger speakers in people's homes right now than there are at the campground, just because we don't want these problems. If you look up here, this is how small the speakers are. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 tiny little speakers so people can hear them from all over and they don't have to be loud at all. I bet most of you have speakers bigger than that in your house. And if we were just going to have a concert and kick everybody out at 11 o'clock, well, then we're defeating the purpose of putting drunk drivers on the road. Because people, you know how they get. They were going to have a designated driver or not going to drink that much. They end up drinking too much. We are totally against that. We want people to not drink and drive.
You've indicated that the attendance never exceeds 1,000. How do you know that? What kind of
by ticket sales. So like this year when we did and the event, it all went through. Because on a normal weekend, it's just regular camping pricing. On the one event weekend, it went through this thing called Eventbrite, and I think there was 541 tickets sold throughout the whole weekend.
Maybe this is not from Mike, but is there a definition of what a concert is?
I've looked it up a few different ways. Webster's Dictionary says like a free gathering, a musical event in a community, where it's like, well, that's not a...
I'm more wondering if we have it in the zoning, what a concert is, or event, or...
I tried looking it up, and I did not see it in yours.
I'm talking to you right now.
Oh, sorry.
We don't have a definition for concert in Chapter 15.
All right, thank you, Mr. Cappers. Stand by. Is there anybody else who would like to speak now in opposition to revoking the permits? All right, and finally, oh, yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Joe Duvac. I'm actually a neighbor.
Say again, please.
Sorry, my name is Joe Duvac.
Joe Duvac.
Yes. I live literally overlooking above the campground since 2004, so even before Mike has owned it. And since Mike's owned it, it's been much better than it was before. Then it was loud, it was noisy. Anytime there's even anything, everyone around there knows all they have to do is talk to Mike. He'll address it. He'll remedy it, whatever. He never hesitated. You can't hear the music. He pointed out, actually, he is correct. The music that he gets blamed for does come from River's Edge. You can hear it through town, every bit of it, because the bar is on the far end from where the neighbor that's complaining or all of us are from the street. It's the opposite end of the campground from the entrance anyways. So the noise doesn't even really get up there at all. You can hear maybe a campsite that brings louder music than that bar has. People have their trailers. I've been down there, we've camped. They have louder systems than the bar, by far, brought in. He follows the 11 o'clock. He's, like you said too, hardworking for the community. The tourism, losing that business would affect Somerset greatly. Only having one other campground left, really. And Mike does so much for food shelf, local everything, events and whatnot, and he pays for it all. He doesn't even try to get anything out of it. All he does was try to support our town and does his best by it. I don't understand why there's is even gotten to this either for the campground. Mike has done nothing but improve that campground greatly and the area. Yeah, any questions? I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. DeVac.
All right, yeah. And yeah, I do have a clear line of sound to anyone around there pretty much because I live above it, so I would know. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, Crystal Johnson. I live at 694 170th. I live right beside the Hideaway, and I've been pretty much on the farm that joins the land since I was a kid. A few years gone. So I've seen it both ways. I moved onto that location in 2010, and I was a little nervous on living next to the Hideaway. I thought, oh, I'm going to have some problems. But my first interaction with Mike as a Hideaway owner was him coming to check to see if the speakers and the sound was adequate to make sure that he wasn't disturbing the family, because he wanted to make sure that all the neighbors were happy. So I was like, wow, that was pretty awesome. And he's continued to check in like that. As far as people coming through there and anything, like, I used to see people all over. It was a mess. There was accidents, there was just like whatever, but also like that was a different time and age. Just kept up with the time and age to change it to, you know, make sure everybody is safe and whatever. I'm not in the campground, but I am right beside it. I can hear it, I can see it, I see the traffic. The traffic is so minimal. I mean, sometimes I wonder if he's even operating because there's so minimal stuff going on. I think if there's problems with his CPU or CUP, instead of revoking it, he mentioned that changing it was not desirable, but you guys, like he mentioned, you've already done a lot of research and everything. So if there's changes or stipulations that you need to be done, I think instead of revoking it, you should give time and cooperation to make these adjustments that you need, rather than changing it all. And I know that if I were to reach out to him, or anybody else would reach out to him with a problem I've seen through the community, if you have a problem with his business or what's going on, he will take the time out of his schedule to talk to you and address it and how you need, to try and come up with a compromise for everybody, because he's trying to have his business and make it happy for everybody in the community. But I mean, you can't please everybody. There has to be a reasonable merit, and like, so police activity and loudness and, you know, all that. I hear it all. I have dogs. I have a granddaughter. If there was a disturbance, I wouldn't be happy living where I am, and I'm not encountering that. Any questions?
What is your background that informs your advice to us that we should do a revision?
Well, because based on what you presented today, because I had no idea what was in the CPU or CUP, I'm sorry, I'm not probably saying it right. Based on what was presented today, I see that you have specific things that that were potential quote-unquote violations. However, like you said, you don't have a specific definition of what a concert is. So how can you say that he's having more if you don't yourself yet have a definition of what that is? You mentioned the 288 campsites versus the 100. Well, I haven't seen that thing. I have no idea. I'm not anybody. But was it ever, he mentioned that he had present to the county that how many campsites he has. Was that presented? Was that like the gesture to think that he had fulfilled that need to inform? The high water mark, I have no idea about the high water mark, but I know that the river has drastically changed through the years. Has that high water mark changed to maybe where things need to be tweaked or not? I don't know these things, but I hope the people who do, such as yourselves, because you've done ecstatic research, look into that and take that in consideration.
What kind of research did you say?
The gentleman who spoke said that that you as a board have done extensive research on this potential problem.
Extensive was the word you used, Tim.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I thought you said hydrostatic for a moment there.
Oh, no, I tend to mumble. I apologize.
No. Any other questions from the board? Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Anybody else wish to speak with respect to this? Let's now ask for those who might want to speak but are neither for nor against, but perhaps have some viewpoint, some comment, some suggestion for how the board can make the best possible decision without your necessarily taking a stand on one side or the other. Anybody? Yes, sir.
My name is Frank Plord. I have property, my family and I have property called P&P Properties that is located on the opposite side of the river, east and north of Hideaway. It's where the 35 and 64 intersection is. We've got about 160 acres, which was part of a farm originally, that is still being farmed on the acreage we can. That property is in the village of Somerset and has been classified as general use, so the property is being sold, or we're attempting to do so. It's both commercial, retail, as well as residential along the river. And we've been in discussions with several developers who have been interested in the property, and they get to the stage where they're serious about doing something and they back out because of the Apple River. And I'm not against tubing, but the key is there's a stigma in the village, as well as I guess it would be the township, that economic development is really hindered by the present view of the activities on the Apple River, and highlighted by what happened back in earlier this year with the stabbing. And those are deterrents to economic development, not only in the village of Somerset or the town of Somerset, but also the town of Star Prairie. And I think there's an effort that is going to be going underway to try and develop a reasonable plan where the river can be used the way to enjoy the natural beauty and the value of it without alienating certain members of society who don't necessarily want to participate in a risky activity. So My comments are that this is a broader view than just Mike's issue at the moment. It's what is going to be the economic development of the area, given the reputation that it has had and will continue to have if we continue with the current activities on the river. That's my comments. Any questions?
Well, Mr. Plurd, could you be a little bit more specific? What is it about the activities that you're singling out that causes developers to lose interest in your property and others similarly situated?
I guess I can talk about a recent example of where there was a local developer that was interested in developing a consortium to build both commercial retail right along the intersection as well as the residential on the closer to the river. And he went through the village to come up with a plan that he'd like to develop that include a comprehensive display of all of the activities that he would like to have there, and started developing with the commercial person a proposal to buy our property. His only concern was the ability to have like a hotel and that kind of activity that would view the river, and the concern is basically what people are going to be doing on the river that would affect the people that are either buying homes or staying in hotels or visiting retail places that would be along the river. And he backed out after some serious discussions and much investment on his part to develop the plan on the basis of what happened with the stabbing this summer. And his concern is unless that activity is under control or eliminated, it's going to be difficult to try and sell homes and to have businesses occur along in the vicinity of the river with the history that's been happening.
I gather you're not specifically in opposition to what the hideaway customers are doing on the river, but you're taking a more broad focus. But what is it that they do on the river that is harmful, that has anything to do with the hideaway's operation?
Probably the language that is used in some cases due to some sort of influence, alcohol or drugs, and the nudity that occurs, as well as just it's kind of we used to have a tubing business many years ago, my brother and I, and we would generally work with groups, church groups or other groups, and families. And when drinking became a bigger aspect of that activity, families stayed away, groups didn't come, so we stopped doing it. And that was the reason that they stopped coming, was it wasn't a wholesome recreation in some cases because of the influence of alcohol and drugs. And that's the reputation that I think the village is fighting now, they want to do an economic development focus, and the pushback they're seeing is the free-for-all summer break or spring break type attitude that occurs in general on the river, not related to any specific operator, but just the fact that people are doing it and believe that they can do this on the river. And that's what's, I think, inhibiting some of the growth of the area.
Does it have anything to do with concerts, in your opinion?
I guess I can't say one way or another. I'm not familiar with that enough.
Any other questions? Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Plord. Anyone else got a comment to offer us? Is there anything further you wanted to say, Mr. Wozniak?
Well, what I would say is, I personally viewed videos posted on the Hideaway's Facebook page that show the music events going on well beyond midnight. They're posted times on these videos. It's loud. There's light shows. It creates. Well, I think that's what's creating some of the issues that we're getting complaints about. I would also say this issue came to us, not the other way around. We didn't seek it out. We didn't identify it as staff. We kept getting complaints, and both from residents and the town, and so the town officials. So that's why you've been asked to consider whether the two zoning permits that apply. And I would say also that because there's more than one regulating entity here, if Mr. Cappers has worked with public health and updated his license to reflect more campsites, that's fine, but the license that public health provided us indicated it reads 51 to 100 sites. So that's what, that's what we're going on in terms of the amount of camping. Maybe that can be changed. There's considerations of meeting sanitary needs and some spacing requirements depending on the kind of site you have. So some of those issues are licensing issues through public health, but in terms of the overall zoning authorization for the site, what the county has on file from the 91 submittal is 100 sites. If there's any other questions that are generated from any of this testimony, I'd be happy to try to answer them if I can.
Ms. Denzer?
I would just like to add that Mike does have, and he did put in your packet for last month when we requested this be put on the agenda, links to those various videos. If you feel they should be added to the record, we could take a short break and get it set up so we could play them for you for the record that document that the events happened after midnight and that they were loud and have date stamps as to how many and when they were. We also, I would just point out that Mr. Capper said that at some point he had met with our staff and something about additional campsites. Again, Mike has done an exhaustive review of every record in our office, and there is no record of that, no record of an approval, no record of an amendment, no record of a change to the permits that we have been able to locate or find. So I think that what our staff report says we would stand behind. Any questions for me?
Board members, with respect to the offer of additional evidence, the links to the website documentation, I would recommend that we incorporate it in the record, but I don't think we need to see it unless one of you wishes to see it. But given the possibility that this will end up in court, I would recommend we add it to the record so it's available.
Excuse me, I'm still concerned about the definition of concerts and events and music. I really am.
Well, I think we...
I mean, if
Yeah,
the
we're-
conditional use permit before said 2 concerts, what are concerts?
Right. I think we have to kind of put ourselves in the shoes of the board members at that time and say, what did they mean when they used the word concerts? Why did they not, get into greater specificity? They evidently had some sort of understanding. It was a unanimous decision, I noticed. So they all thought they knew what they were talking about. They were undoubtedly talking in the contexts of that day's hearing, you know, to what had been talked about, what they'd read in the newspapers in terms of advertisements. Back then, there wasn't much of an internet, I think. You know better than I do on that topic. Let's, yes, Ms. Peterson. And
I agree with you.
Still taking evidence, of course.
I agree that it should be admitted, and I did view some of those links, and in my estimation, they're accurate.
They seem to you to be evidence of what Mr. Wozniak claims that, okay.
Yes.
All right, I'm going to make one more attempt to get one more pass for people who would like to speak so that they can respond to the comments that we've heard from each other and that sort of thing. You, sir, did you want to speak now?
Yes. My name is Tim Witzman. I'm a town board supervisor at the town of Somerset. And I just wanted to point out a couple of additional things. This year, because of a lack of a tubing license earlier in the season, the Apple River Hideaway had fewer events. Last year, I think we identified that there were 6 events, and whether you call them concerts or music events, and if they're not called concerts, then we would have to put them, which have an exception till 11 p.m., then the rest of the music has quiet time after 10. So I think there's some latitude to say if it isn't a concert, then it should be quiet at 10. If it is a concert or music event or a DJ event, then it has to be quiet at 11. So although there's probably some ambiguity about what a concert is, the music scene has changed, and a lot of places will just have DJ events, but there's music and noise. That's one of the things. Also, one of the things that the township is doing, we are looking at putting a noise ordinance in so we have some latitude to enforce noise, because we've heard of the noise issues, and as the Sheriff's Department indicated, they cannot enforce noise issues when there's not an ordinance, and I believe the St. Croix County does not have a noise ordinance. Thank you.
Would anybody like to be heard again or for the first time? Mr. Cappers in particular, is there anything that you wish to have a rebuttal on? If so, step up to our microphone, please, so it gets properly recorded.
Just that when the county was going through the new ordinance changes, Lori Diaby, she was the one taking care of everything and to get everything grandfathered in, and the map was sent to her on February 12th, 2016.
Let's see, I think we could note for the record that she is some sort of director in the health department of the county.
She is in public health, not in community development, nothing to do with zoning or their conditional use permit. It's a totally different permit situation.
Do they permit the number of sites?
Yes, they do, and Mike was in contact with her, and she provided the documentation. She is the one who's provided it, that it's only at 100. So we would have to ask Ms. Diaby to provide additional testimony to clarify this.
Did you get anything back in response to your February of 2016 from Ms. Diaby indicating approval for 288?
The email just says, Lori, I saw this on February 1st, date right now, sorry for the delay, and then sent her the map. But
as far as you know, she didn't respond to you?
I'm sure she did. We've had quite a few correspondences over the years.
Do you have to annually renew that license?
Yes.
I may be missing something, but does the license not on its face, I thought I saw it in here, indicate 51 to 100?
I don't know. I just bill pay a check to the county.
You worked with all this, Mr. Wozniak. Does the annual license that is sent out by Ms. Diaby's department indicate every year that the number of campsites is 51 to 100? Let me restate my question. Does the annual license indicate the limit of 100 maximum campsites?
Yes, I mean, it's... Pardon me, yes, and I could pull up a copy of it, but it...
Could you?
The way
Well,
they...
maybe I can find it in paper here even quicker.
Sure.
I see a whole bunch of town licenses in here, and packet pages in the low 100s.
Mike, could you please blow it up a little bigger then, so everyone can see it clearly with the,
Okay, you've got it up, and what packet
Right there.
page is that?
This, I believe, is the current with an expiration date of June 2023, and there's also a license that was provided for the Apple Eatery site for food services concession.
It's package page 138.
Thank you.
If that number needs to be changed, it can be changed, but I'm not sure how it got to that number when Ed Thurman comes out every year and does his campground inspection, looks at all of our backflow preventers. He does the water testing a couple times a year. He comes out and does the kitchen inspections. And like I said, had to send that map to Miss Diaby, so everything was grandfathered in with a number of sites before the county adopted the new ordinances.
Board members, the most current license says 51 to 100 sites. Okay, anything else you'd like to say, Mr. Cappers?
I don't think so, sir.
No. Sure, Dave.
How late, Mr. Cappers, do you keep the bars open? How late do you serve alcohol?
It depends on the night, but we only open the bars Friday night and Saturday night. And usually Friday night we'll do a beer pong tournament, just get people up there socializing with each other, and depending on what time that gets done. And then the bars are Friday night and Saturday night are able to stay open until 2:30, but we usually close them down 1:30 or so. And then it's only open, like I said, Friday and Saturday night, and then sometimes Saturday during the day if the weather's nice and there are enough tubers are going down.
Now, earlier you mentioned about shutting it down at 11 o'clock and sending people out on the road that may have had too much to drink. Unless you have security, do you have security forces on the grounds?
We have plenty of staff to take care of any possible incidents, yes. I don't like the term security because those are usually guys that wear the gloves and mace and try to like start fights instead of de-escalate things. So we have staff. that handle any kind of situation. And as far as what we were talking about, the 11 o'clock, that was with like the one concert we had. That music was done at 11 on the main stage.
But my point is, you mentioned about keeping them there so they don't get out on the road, but if the bar is still open.
Because people, the way we've done it every year is if they book for 2 nights or more, they get a free tubing pass. This year we weren't able to do tubing till the end of July, but we have set it up so people come in, set up their campsite on Friday, and then leave on Sunday by checkouts, usually right around 11 o'clock, everybody's leaving. I hate drinking and driving. I hate it. So I see what some of the other places, and I go check out other tubing places all around 6-7 hour area. And I'm not a fan of people going tubing for the day and then driving after they've been tubing, because people unfortunately drink more than they expected. And we try to discourage the day tubing and make it a weekend for everybody. We try to do activities there to keep them on site and make them have fun and want to come back year after year.
Thank you. You mentioned some of your personal views, now just that you hate drunk driving and things like that. And I would want to just mention that our decision would never be about you, because the decisions that we make result in permits and conditions on permits that are transferable to anybody. And so we would make our decision irrespective of what your personal views are, laudable as they may be.
And Mr. Wozniak, even in, I watched last month's meeting this morning, and he talks about all these citizen complaints, all the town board complaints. The emails from the town board, from Mr. Witzman, aren't complaints. They're just questioning, like, hey, what's going on with this? How many events can he have? And then there's literally, if you look through the paperwork, there's one email or emails from one person that's making a complaint. That's it. So I don't believe it's enough to revoke anything.
Great. And again, the personalities of the citizens or the personalities of the board members or any of the other witnesses are not a factor in our decisions. It's as though they were representatives of a viewpoint. It's the viewpoint that counts, not the presenter, to put it a different way. Anybody else wanting to speak or present any evidence? Mr. Miller.
Mr. Cappers likes to just think it's just one person. Maybe you guys should grab the complaints from the sheriff's department, not necessarily 911, but they have a record, correct? So you should be able to see what kind of the amount of complaints you're getting, not from myself, but probably other neighbors that have better things to do than to come down here at a meeting and take the time out of their day. So there's probably a lot more complaints than he is talking about. So maybe investigate that too before you guys make your decision. And the whole reason why I'm here is the noise. It has nothing to do with the camping, it has nothing to do with the liquor license, any other stuff. I think it's the noise is the problem. I think that needs to be addressed. That's what I'm here about.
Well, it's 11:34. I believe we've had all the testimony and all the evidence that we're going to get. So I am going to close the hearing. Ms. Denzer?
Again, you made it clear you'd like any of the information on events as be part of the record, but I also would point out that last month we provided you with complaints from additional people that we had, and in response to the recent comment, I would tell you that we did, as directed by the board last month, we did contact the sheriff's office repeatedly and they did not get back to us, and we asked for copies of their complaints, which we do know are public record, whether they had insufficient staff or some other reason, but they did not respond to our request since last month. Or we would have included that in this packet. We can continue to reach out, and if you would like, if you would like additional documentation. So just that there are more things in last month's report as far as complaints. Thank you.
Well, the things that you presented last month are already a part of the public record. And so they will be available if a court needs to review things. And if there are things in the sheriff's logs or documents or files, they will, of course, also be available to any court that wishes to review them, if we need to do that. So that said, members, unless you have different views, I'm proposing to close the hearing now and to proceed to a decision, probably after taking a 5-minute break, but that'll be the next stage. And then, then we'll take up the Reeser case after that. All right? So the hearing is now closed at 11:36. And we'll resume in 5 minutes at 11:41, or as soon as thereafter as we can get back together. Well, the clock says 11:45, and so we have our board back, and it's time to make a decision, or else think of some really good reason to put off making a decision by a motion to defer or look for other data or whatever. So I'm ready to receive a motion to accept the staff recommendation or not, or do something else. If nobody else makes a motion, I will. Mr. Peterson.
I would move that we move to revoke the both permits by reason of, in my opinion, too much ambiguity, although not intended, but I think the best result for the public and the town is to start over and get it right.
I would second your motion, Mr. Peterson, to adopt the staff recommendation, but my reasoning is slightly different to the extent that I think in the key points that matter, there is not ambiguity, that it should have been obvious to the permit holder that the company, the LLC, was in violation of the key points of their permits. Small thing there, yeah. How about the rest of you? Would you like to be heard in the debate and discussion phase of dealing with this motion before we either adopt the motion or deny it?
Well, I'm still confused. I mean, there's no noise ordinance. Sounds like the town of Somerset needs to create one to help regulate. We have no definitions of some of the key terms. Yeah, I'm conflicted.
Well, I'm concerned about the noise. I know it can be very annoying if you're trying to sleep and you've got to get up early in the morning. I do understand Mr. Copper's situation, because trying to control noise can be an issue, but that doesn't excuse the fact that you've got to try to do something. And I just think you can't have that noise late at night when people are trying to sleep. And the complaints, if I understand it correctly, are mostly about the noise.
Is there going to be a substantial cost for Mr. Cappers to get new conditional use permits?
There's an application fee that's based on an estimate. It's approved by the county board every few years to change the fees, and they're based on what it costs to have the staff work on an application, work up the decisions, gather the facts, visit the sites and such like that. I don't know the current numbers, but I know the rationale that's been used in the past for the way the fees are set. Oh, and including the cost of publication, of course, so the public can have a proper notice and be involved if they want to be involved in our decisions. I think the record in the testimony convinces me that we have substantial violations of both permits here. So that's the way I intend to vote. Any more discussion? All in favor of adopting the motion to revoke both permits should now vote aye.
Aye.
And all opposed should vote nay.
Nay.
Let the record show that the vote was 3-1, and the permits are therefore revoked at this stage. That's it for that, folks. We'll take up the other application that's on our agenda right now. And Mr. Wozniak, you're going to make that presentation also?
Board of Adjustment members, public, applicant and their agent here for this consideration of these items, I should say. We have next on the agenda for the Board of Adjustment consideration of several variance requests and a conditional use permit request for property owned by Timothy and Kristen Reeser, their agent Mick Mariansky, and the property is located at 280 Cove Road in the town of Troy. And I'll note that this property is in the Lower St. Croix Riverway Overlay District, and hence our review of the item pertains to regulatory requirements in those district overlay regulations. Included with your packet are the staff report I'm running through, the variance and conditional use permit applications, and I'll note that we just received late in the day yesterday a comment letter from Wisconsin DNR, Mike Wentholz, and that was distributed, copies were distributed to the board, and I'll comment on that a little further in the staff overview of this item. The property in question, again, 280 Cove Road, it's approximately a half-acre size parcel. Lot width is approximately 90 feet, and the property is served by private drive with two other properties to the south. Comes off of Cove Road and kind of runs across the property and serves, again, two others. In terms of site conditions that are pertaining to this request, there's an existing garage that was permitted via conditional, detached garage, I should clarify, that was permitted via conditional use permits and again, formerly called special exception permit in 1987. The existing home was built in the 1960s, predating the Lower St. Croix Riverway Overlay District, and is a legal non-conforming use. The gray hatched areas shown on this drawing represent the areas that have a grade less than 12%. So most of the lot, the grade exceeds 12%, as you can see from this drawing. Additionally, the site is accessed by a private driveway, again shared with two other properties to the south. You can see in one of these photos that driveway running past the existing detached garage on the Reeser's property. The home is 14 feet, elevation-wise, 14 feet below the elevation of the garage and the private driveway. From the northeast corner of the house to the driveway, it's approximately a 35% grade. If you measured it from the southeast corner of the house to the driveway, it is approximately 17.5%, and approximate average grade would be 26.25%. You can see a walkway from the garage or driveway down to the existing house. In 1987, I'm going to give a little background because it may be relevant to your determinations and decisions you make on these items. In 1987, a 24 by 24 foot detached garage was permitted with a conditional use permit, and subsequently constructed in today's location and size with following conditions. It stated the garage is to be placed 61 feet from what is identified as the point of beginning of the description of the property, not to encroach on the easement for the private driveway. Finished floor elevation to be 1 foot, within 1 foot of the existing driveway elevation, and the entrance to the garage is no closer than 67 feet, again, from that point of beginning, and completed project is inspected by the zoning administration and town chair. Well, in 88, additional background, in 88, a retaining wall was permitted via conditional use with the conditions referenced on this slide. I won't read through each of these, but I'll just note that that was another feature included in the work done at that time. In December of 91, a hearing was held for consideration of revocation of the conditional use permits for the garage and the retaining wall, and a motion was made to revoke both permits for the applicant and for the applicant to reapply so that new conditions could be placed on the project, and the motion was seconded and carried. Going a little further through this history, in March of 92, hearing was held and the applicant proposed the permits be reinstated. Motion was denied, seconded, and carried 5-0 vote, and the motion ordered the removal of the garage and the retaining wall as well as restoration of the property to pre-construction conditions. There was a, in April of 92, the BOA was summoned to the circuit court with a hearing date of January 14th, 1993, and it's noted here, we noted that Judge Wendland ruled the Board of Adjustment was not in a position to revoke the special use permit for the garage, but was able to for the retaining wall. This was because conditions that were to be imposed came after the fact of the initial approval by the Board of Adjustment and Wisconsin-Minnesota St. Croix River Boundary Commission. Now, lastly on this slide, August 17th, 93, a hearing before District Court of Appeals was held, filed by both adjoining neighbors, no participation from the county, where the appeals court affirmed the circuit court judgment, effectively allowing the continuation of the garage, now a legal non-conforming structure. So that kind of clarifies the status of that existing detached garage. Just a quick overview of more recent improvements. In 2018, the current owner applied for a land use permit to install shoreline riprap, slope riprap, and new stairs from the home to the shoreline. And current owners also remodeled the existing home inside and out. And that's, of course, the existing home right here on this photograph. A summary of the project, the applicant's proposing a multifaceted project. They intend to raise an existing non-conforming accessory structure, the garage, the 24 by 24 foot detached garage, construct a 24 by 24 foot garage addition attached to the south side of the non-conforming principal structure of the dwelling. And they're proposing to construct a driveway to the now attached garage on a steep slope connecting the garage to the private drive that serves all three properties. And they would install erosion control structures as part of the driveway. The property owners have stated the variances and proposed improvements are necessary to improve sight lines along their shared driveway. Three homes have access along the shared driveway, and to replace the access from the private drive to the home by having an attached garage, which would make it safer than the existing stairs. They've indicated they intend to live year-round on the property, and have brought forward just safety concerns negotiating the current stairs walkway from the driveway detached garage down to the front door of the house. The proposed site plan, here's a copy, and I'll move on to the next slide, which shows more of a zoomed-in version here. If I can get this to stop jumping around on me. There we go. And again, you can see the position of the proposed attached garage and reconfigured driveway from the private drive that serves all three properties to access that proposed attached garage. And the proposed attached garage side yard setback would be 10 feet from the property line, 15 feet less than the 25-foot required setback. Current home, legal non-conforming home, is at 19.6 from that side yard. And again, the 25-foot required side yard setback is a riverway ordinance requirement. Regarding the site plan, the unaltered location of the proposed driveway is at approximately 28% grade and is in a slope preservation zone, which does not allow modification of the slopes. 50 feet as measured in the area proposed to be modified is shown in orange with a calculated slope of 28%. So it's being measured over the distance to that orange line per what our ordinance says in terms of how we measure slopes. The applicant submitted a slope calculation of 8.3%, which is not calculated correctly according to Riverway Ordinance again, and as shown in blue. So they were looking at a longer distance, and which if you take all of that, you would get the 8.3%. The slope is to be calculated between 25 and 50 horizontal feet per the ordinance. Some additional issues: the existing home and proposed addition do not meet the 200-foot setback from ordinary high water mark required in the riverway. The existing home is 161 feet from the ordinary high, and the proposed addition, the garage, the closest part to the river, would be 188 feet from the ordinary high water mark. The home and the proposed addition are both within slope preservation zone. The existing home exceeds the 1,500 square foot maximum within the for structures within the principal structures within the ordinary high water mark setback. The footprint of the existing home is 1,600 square feet. And, noted the existing detached garage is 576 square feet. And the proposed attached garage that would be considered part of the principal structure is proposed to be 625 square feet. That would result in a total of 2,125 square feet, well in excess of that 1,500 square foot maximum. The The existing site does not meet, again, the 25-foot side yard setback with as proposed attached garage as close as 10. And the noting, again, the existing home is at 19.6 and predates the Riverway Ordinance. The variance requests to be considered by the board, we've outlined on this slide, and they involve Riverway Overlay District Ordinance, Section 17.36.G.5, structure setbacks, variance requests, reduce the 25-foot setback, side yard setback to a 10-foot side yard setback, reduce the 200-foot setback from the ordinary high water mark to 188-foot setback from the ordinary high water mark, and that's where that attached garage would be at its closest point to the water. Also, the in terms of overlay district ordinance, section 17.36 I2E, expansion of non-conforming principal structures, to expand a structure beyond 1,500 square feet within the 200-foot setback of the ordinary high water mark, and to expand a structure within 40 feet setback of the slope preservation zone are other variances that would be required in order for this project to proceed. We haven't received any comments from the town of Troy. If the applicant attended a meeting with the town, they may wish to comment in their remarks if they have a town's position on this. And I did note that we did receive a letter from the Mike Wenholz with the DNR on this, and just late yesterday, Mike's had some extenuating circumstances, including a death in the family, that has caused him to be a little slower than he might normally be in getting back to us. However, his letter, I would note, is typical in that it references the requirement in statute for variances, the requirements of unique physical limitation, no harm to public interest, and unnecessary hardship. And basically, Mike has taken a position that's is consistent with the staff recommendations on this. And you know, the last paragraph of his letter pretty much documents his position, and what he says is the applicant does not appear to demonstrate a unique property limitation nor an unnecessary hardship exist for this request. According to the staff report and past experience, it appears that there are other properties in the area with steep slopes, slope preservation zone, and limited level areas to build. The applicant wanting a garage closer to the house and further from the driveway, shared driveway, for reasons stated in their application narrative, while understandable, is as a circumstance of the applicant, not an issue with the property. These concerns and issues identified by the applicants existed when the property was purchased, and the property has maintained reasonable legal use in the past and continues to without the garage being in the proposed location. He goes on to say a few more things, but I'll limit my reading of his letter there. The actions to be considered by the Board of Adjustment. Board of Adjustment, after contemplating all relevant information, may do one of the following: approve the request with or without conditions, deny the request, table or postpone the decision to absorb information gathered or request additional information. And I just note, as you understand with your many past actions, that the Board of Adjustment must stipulate findings to support the decision for approval or denial. And also, we would recognize that the Board of Adjustment must take separate action and stipulate findings to support their decision for each of the 4 variance requests as indicated on the agenda. I won't read through our standard slide that has our statutory authority and criteria unless the board has any questions about this. What I will do is run through findings of fact and conclusions of law that we've included in the staff report relative to the variance requests. The general information about the property that we typically include, we do call out the specific requests being made that I just ran through, so I won't run through them again for expediency here. I'd just like to correct in this finding that we now have the letter dated September 21st, 2022 from the Wisconsin DNR from Mike Wendholz that we should recognize as part of the findings. And we have not received comments as of yet from Troy, unless you hear something otherwise at the meeting today. Item 6 here, to qualify for a variance, the applicant has the burden of proof to demonstrate that all three requirements defined in state statute are met. Again, just like Mike Wendholz referenced in his letter, one of those is unnecessary hardship. Applicant does have alternatives to install a lift and or stairway, a meandering path, possibly through a conditional use permit, or to modify and not expand the detached garage to improve the line of sight with exiting the garage, while ensuring the new structure remains visually inconspicuous from the river. Second issue, unique property limitations. The existing buildings on the site were constructed on a relatively flat section of the parcel. There's a steep slope between the house and the detached garage. However, many properties in the vicinity have extensive steep slopes and very little buildable area that will conform with applicable setbacks. Alternatives available to the applicant include to build a new set of stairs, again, and or a lift to navigate the steep slope between the house and or the detached garage, and or to modify and not expand, but modify the existing garage and or private driveway to improve the line of sight when exiting the garage. Lastly, under these criteria, that no harm to the public interest, the request will meet the intent of the Riverway overlay in that. And we note here the public through St. Croix County has a strong regulatory interest in protection of the bluff line and water quality of the St. Croix River. The applicants plan to reconstruct and enlarge an existing principal structure greater than the allowed square footage, closer to the required 25-foot side yard setback, expansion into the bluff line setback, and expansion that exceeds, again, that 1,500 square feet of the principal structure, either within the slope preservation zone, either within or within the 40-foot, are all inconsistent with Riverway Ordinance standards to protect the bluff line and water quality of the river. Regarding Section 17.706E of the ordinance, that states that a variance shall not grant, extend, or increase any use prohibited in the zoning district. A single-family use is a use that may be permitted in the Riverway overlay if constructed in conformance with applicable standards. However, the existing principal structure is not in conformance with the standards, and to allow a non-conforming structure to be enlarged will perpetuate and extend the nonconformity. And regarding being granted for a hardship based solely on an economic gain or loss, we would say this request does not appear to be based solely on an economic gain or loss, as the approval or denial of the request will not change how the property is utilized. Going on in the findings, regarding being granted for a hardship which is self-created, the applicant's request is dictated by the location of existing structures and the topography of the site. However, the applicant is choosing not to pursue alternatives that would allow safe navigation of the slope between the house and detached garage. Essentially, this approach is their preference to make the property able to be used and enjoyed the way they prefer. Would it damage the rights or property values of other persons in the area? Staff would say to that, protecting the integrity of the bluff line and water quality by enforcing setback requirements established in the Riverway Overlay District serve the interest of broader public as well as nearby property owners. Granting of the variance, a requested variance, creates risk for erosion and sedimentation on the bluff that may have the potential to negatively impact the St. Croix River. We'd also note, in terms of allowing action with the appropriate amendments to this ordinance or its associated maps, this criteria, it's not applicable. They're not having to amend the ordinance on this, or are they proposing? Allowing any alteration of a historic district, including its use, which would preclude continued designation as historic district. This criteria, again, is not applicable to the variance request. Staff recommendations regarding the variances. Based on the findings I've just run through, the requested variances do not meet all of the 3 applicable statutory criteria or the applicable criteria set forth in section 17.706E of the Riverway Ordinance to grant a variance. Therefore, staff recommends denial of all 4 of the variances as noted, with these bullet points, and again, I won't reread them. Staff recommends the applicant consider applying for conditional use permit to request the construction of a stairway or a lift to allow for safer navigation of the slope between the existing house and the existing detached garage as an alternative to should these variance requests be denied. Now I'm going to touch on the conditional use permit request that was part of this group of applications. The request is to fill and grade within 40 feet of a slope preservation zone in association with construction of an addition to the principal structure and the driveway. I've already noted the comments received by DNR and that we haven't received comment from Troy. Again, your options are to approve the request, deny the request, or table, postpone the decision if you feel you need more information. Regarding findings for the conditional use permit application portion of this request, we note that the applicant has made a request to fill and grade within the 40-foot setback of the slope preservation zone. The existing septic system, we know, was installed in 2018 and inspected most recently in June of this year and found to be compliant. The existing detached garage is a legal conforming structure because of the actions taken in the past. The applicant shall be subject to filling and grading standards in section 17.36 H5, which are referenced below here. Filling and grading outside of a slope preservation zone as described are allowed with a land use permit, but then the issue is they're either abutting within the 40 or actually within the slope preservation in terms of the grading. And so these provisions, I won't read through each of them, but display them for your interest. I will note on paragraph 2, filling and grading in areas referenced in 1736 F3A 4 through 6 are allowed by conditional use permit, hence why you're considering this request, and all the above standards need to be met. I'll note that further in the findings here, Board of Adjustment shall only grant a conditional use subject to the provisions in section 17.70 G1, which state, and they include no grant of a CP shall violate the spirit or intent of this chapter. I would just note, filling and grading within the 40-foot setback of the bluff line is a use that is allowed by conditional use permit approval and therefore does not violate spirit or intent of the ordinance. However, in regards to this particular project, a variance is required to add to the principal structure, which bypasses the intent and spirit of the code to protect the St. Croix River. Regarding whether the no conditional use shall be allowed, which would be contrary to public health, safety, or general welfare, or which would substantially be adverse to property values in the neighborhood affected. The permit would not be contrary to public health or safety, but given the fact that a variance required to allow work that is being proposed, additional disturbance to the slope in the riverway could lead to additional sedimentation and unnecessary runoff to the river, which would be a harm to the general welfare, as well as provide adverse impacts to the property values. So in some respects, these projects that would require a lot of exceptions to the rules, the challenge is, can they be implemented without creating problems when the site work is being done? In terms of no use shall be permitted by a CUP that would constitute a nuisance by reason of noise, dust, smoke, odor, or similar factors. Staff view on this is the results of the proposed project, in addition to the principal structure, would not constitute a nuisance in and of itself. The only thing we would say is, due to lack of engineered drawings showing how the improved site would handle the runoff from the new driveway and home addition, it cannot be determined if the runoff would create a nuisance to neighboring properties and or the St. Croix River and its users. And lastly, the board shall also apply standards in other sections of the ordinance. Our view is all standards in section 17.36H5 shall be met. I would note that staff recommendation regarding the CUP, staff recommends denial of this permit following either outcome of the Board of Appeals decision on the requested variances. If the variances are denied, based on Board of Adjustment's action to deny the requested variances, the work proposed under the CUP is not possible. Therefore, staff recommends denial of the CUP. If the variances are approved, based on findings of fact and our conclusion of law, the requested CUP application, staff believes, does not meet all of the applicable statutory requirement or the applicable criteria set forth in 17.70G1. Therefore, staff recommends denial of the conditional use permit also. At that, the applicant is here, and I'm sure that they wish to represent, based on the staff recommendations, represent their arguments in favor of their request, and staff is available to answer any questions the board may have on this item.
Mr. Wozniak, I assumed that the proposal is to remove the existing impervious surface consisting of the turnaround area and the garage floor, if approval is given for the construction of the new location of the garage and the driveway to serve it.
That's how it's been represented to staff. Correct.
So, and it looks as though eyeballing it, that would probably be pretty close to no net increase of impervious surface on this lot. Is that the way you
I think
look
you're
at it?
approximate, yes.
It was also not clear to me whether or not there would be what amounts to a sort of basement under the new garage, and if so, that would be connected to the house in a way that would provide additional storage space or other space sheltered from the elements. What do you know about that?
I'll defer. That question may have come up or been asked, but I honestly can't can't recall if it was. I think the applicant could clarify whether that's their intent or not.
Okay. Other board members? Good. Well, as is our usual process, then, those who'd like to speak in favor of the application have their opportunity now.
Good afternoon, Board. My name is Mick Mariansky. I am the owner's agent or owner's representative, operating through my personal design consultancy, Design and Construction Consulting, also a principal with an architectural firm in Denver, Colorado. I just happen to live in Wisconsin. Met Tim and Kristen several months ago, and they explained their unique constraints on this project site to me. As one who is a design professional and thrives on really difficult problem solving, I opted to volunteer my time to try and help them out. I've prepared the variance request for the research as well as the conditional use. I've visited the site a number of times. We do have design and engineering measures at our disposal to reconcile this unique and difficult site. We all fully understand and fully recognize the nonconformities, the environmental sensitivities, and the difficulties and challenges as Mike has so presented. Just as a high altitude overview, without getting into the minutiae and detail, just wanted to present the perspective of the design concept here. To apply the concept of adaptive reuse as an environmentally sensitive site development mechanism to return the existing home and site to a higher conforming use rather than two separate, disconnected, non-conforming structures. Summarily, the goals of our site development follow: lower the riverway view corridor by demolishing the existing non-conforming garage higher up the slope, thusly reducing the non-conforming structures from 2 to 1. Only today did I understand that the detached garage is now a legal conforming use, or if maybe I misunderstood that, Mike. But, to improve stormwater management, site access, and vehicular safety for this and adjacent properties. As one who has navigated this both on foot, although I'm only 54 and can still get around quite well, and on vehicle. It's impossible to see over your own hood pulling back out onto the private roadway. Provide slope stabilization through improved stormwater management. We fully recognize we are unable to change the site's use to be fully conforming due to the existing constraints, but our plan is a permitted use and allows us to bring the site state to a closer conformance. We're trying to reduce the level of nonconformity on the site. We're here today to appeal to the sense of engineering and architecture to solve this unique problem. I personally know it can be done as one who builds 50 to multiple million of dollar projects across the country. To answer your exact question, Mr. Malik, the proposal does include a reinforced concrete structure that attaches to the existing building underground, serves a basement function as well as a foundation. The proposal would bring the garage level up to roughly grade level, slightly higher, just due to stormwater and water management. So that would be within the design scope. And on the site here, I've been trying to do this, as I said, a volunteer basis, so I don't want to exhaust their money on engineering, design, professional service fees, and just have the design shot down through the variance request. We understood that this was a really big ask of the board to even consider this. So we've just done, basic sketches to keep fees down. As I said, I don't even have a contract with these guys. I've just been volunteering my own professional services. I do that through, the community as well. I do counsel many people on design and construction, and I don't charge for it. So we've defined a mechanism of how we can pull this off, putting the majority of an attached garage on the low slope zone. Only, maybe 8 to 10% is in the slope preservation zone. The remainder of the proposal is within almost flat slope area. We would probably engineer an elevated serrated bar grading system to form an elevated driveway to get down to the garage. Serrated bar grading for traction, recognizing this is the north. We have winter for 6 months of the year. That proposal doesn't disturb the existing topography. It's sensitive to the existing topography. We can make it look pretty. That's not the problem. We can solve the problems. We just recognize we can't do it without the board's approval. Design and engineering is fully able to make this happen, and as you alluded to, we're not increasing, at least not by much, the net impervious area of the site. We do have annual erosion on the project site that the researchers have to clean up after major storm events. The contributing factor is the existing garage that's detached. By eliminating that structure, we can then take more control of the overall site and put in trees, put the forest back, make it like it used to be. Those are just some of the measures at our disposal. Mike covered the details in very good detail, I'd say, Mike, of the hardships and constraints that we are hit with on this development relative to the ordinary high water mark and the basic fact that this original building footprint, which probably used to be a cabin or a cottage and has been converted to a house and then converted again without changing the footprint. But the original footprint was set on the site prior to the development standards and the overlay district. We all recognize that, and we all understand, I think everyone here understands that, you know, the development standards, they're not written, you know, they're there to protect the environment, to protect the public and control development, which needs to be done. But they don't necessarily take into account existing conditions. And that's what brings us here today, is we have a site that predates the standards, and we're just asking for relief in order to make an improvement to a house that, roughly 625 square feet, raising whatever that was, 550 for the existing, to try and bring that together, to make the home functional for a retired couple who just recently moved from Minnesota to Wisconsin and are contributing to the tax base in the state of Wisconsin and the county of St. Croix. So that's the overall. I do believe the owners would like the opportunity to speak and convey their hardship with the site and the accessibility. Any questions for me?
Yes, sir. Where would you propose to conduct the runoff from the roof of the new garage?
That would tie in with the same runoff from the house, which is guttered.
That is currently conducted to a place between the house and the river bluff?
Yes. I think the owner can speak to the weir in the back of the property.
So you'd run, which way would the peak of the garage roof run? You're indicating a direction that is in the same direction the cars would go in. No, it's not. It's perpendicular to it.
Yeah, they would be pulling in from the gable end side or hip
roughly
side.
a line between the street and the river. So, so the water from the side of the garage, that garage roof that is closest to the front door of the house, how would that get around to the weir on the river side of the house?
Pipe it, hard pipe it underground.
You'd
We
run
can
it-
actually take it down through a foundation wall, across a foundation, and go out the other side to daylight or to the weir.
And then keep leaves out of it some way.
Absolutely.
The driveway is an interesting idea. You're talking about an elevated, serrated bar driveway.
Bar grading.
bar grading driveway, that would be a steel, I suppose?
Yeah, it would be steel on a steel support base. We could do riprap and gravel as well, but I think we all recognize the driveway has to maintain a level of permeability. It can't be concrete, can't be asphalt. So my initial reaction to the unique challenge was, okay, let's recognize that the driveway has to be permeable. And that works with the existing topography and natural environment and resources.
Would that be suitable for people to also walk on in
Yes,
the, in the
we
winter?
would equip it with a rail as well, understanding it's going to get steep. I think I can reduce the slope of it by bringing the driveway back up this direction and working, when I can take advantage of working parallel with the contour lines, I'm able to drop more grade.
So your actual proposal for the route of the driveway is not the one that's shown on page 187, but is a curve.
It's the driveway's not covered.
There's no roof over it, no.
No, the garage would have a roof, but not the driveway.
Yes, so
And this is, simply predicated on the fact that this is a retired couple. They want it to be, they chose it to be their forever home. And having direct physical connection to the house as we age gets more important.
yes, sir, go ahead.
The driveway you're talking about, I guess, I'm thinking in terms of freezing rain we often get wintertime. How would that affect that? How would, to keep from slipping off that thing?
Most of it would fall through. Understanding that freezing rain, being the phenomena it is, it sticks due to surface tension of water and it freezes. And there's not a thing we can do about it. We recognize it. You don't go to work that day. We live in the north. We have to deal with it.
Of course, we're at a paved surface, it would be subject to ice and hard-packed snow and other things that make certain routes difficult to traverse on certain days. Other questions for Mr. Mariansky from the board? No? Okay.
Okay.
Who else would like to be heard?
Thank you. Hi, I'm Kristen Reeser, my husband Tim. We are the owners of this property. We actually bought it in 2015 with the intention of moving in right away because we had a business in Hudson. And then our son decided that he wanted to finish up high school in Minnesota, so we waited for a few years. When we initially built the house, I think last year we spent a whole 20 nights there, so we really didn't appreciate the challenges that we really did face there. Each of you walked up and down that steps. I don't think I have to explain how challenging it was. And those steps really weren't even those steps. Those steps were put in temporarily just to help the contractors come to the front door so that they could effectively carry down the cabinets, carry down different things, because they were slipping on the slope. So there really wasn't another option. When we went to do some of the other projects, because this isn't our first time before you. We've come and we've made many improvements to the property. We had new steel steps put in that go down to the bluff. I think some of you went down there to look at the view from down there. We did the house. We did some new riprap across the front to protect our bluff. We were the only homeowners in that 14 range area that didn't have it, and we felt that that was important to protect our property. So we're making significant investment there. We respect the waterway, we respect that there's rules, but we're also grateful that when we reading the ordinances and how we've chose to interpret them, that they also allowed for this body and this process to take place for when we have these situations that don't fall under the typical rules. But no doubt, I feel wholeheartedly we do, that they still meet the spirit and intent of all the ordinances that this body was sent to protect. The other day, had a huge hailstorm. I barely got to my garage, and all I could think of is, how am I going to get down to my front door? Am I going to wipe out? Am I going to come up and down? I would disagree that hardships. I know when I first went with Mark, he said, well, they weren't that bad. They are. We don't have anything. We know that in order to do absolutely anything, we have to come before this board, whether we put in a circular steps or some other mitigating thing. I don't know how many times we can come before you, though, and just kind of throw a dart at a dartboard and try to say, I hope they pass this one. It is our hope, and it always has been, that we actually sit down and say, here's our hardships. What are we open to? We felt so blessed when, thank goodness for beer, because Tim met Mick through some mutual friends, and he said, well, this is what I specialize in. I think I'm a problem solver. We can figure out a way that is in everyone's interest. Your question about the water, we weren't required to have gutters throughout, just in the front. We chose to put more gutters in. We ended up putting the big drain holes in so that we would route the water properly. We put in a separate French drain. We're doing things that we feel are going to protect the long-term beauty and bluff and whatnot. But again, I don't think these ordinances, that when they wrote them, they were looking at a 90-foot wide residential property that's located out of the sight lines for an inability to actually make access to the house. I mean, I'm in pretty good shape right now, but I've got my parents here, and I cringe when we have to invite people over because they can't make it down the steps. It's hard. Forget about any other type of, you're carrying things up and down. A rainstorm or snowstorm, these steps are they're going to be slippery. That's challenging. We have a shared driveway. The people at the very end were very fortunate. They had not, we were barely there. Our neighbors are not seasonal, they're just there occasionally. So you don't have a lot of traffic on there, but now we have 3 drivers when our son's home. And one of the first days, as soon as I'm backing out, I can't back my car out of the garage and actually see if a car is coming. It's hard, so you actually have to come out. I can't back out and swing around at all. You can't make it there. And then I'm into the bluff, which is all cut up. Our intention is to try to secure that when we go through all this. Again, we envision this as an opportunity to make improvements all around. When you come up over to access onto Cove Road, as our neighbor said, well, you just kind of have to gun it. I think back when they were building, my sister and I went to go look at the house. They were still in construction. And it was funny at the time because we couldn't get up the little slope. And we laughed about it, whatnot. It's not so funny now. I'm thinking that that's how it's going to be. How do I actually get up and over so that I can safely access? How do I have people come over to my house? With respect, I'm going to disagree about the economic challenges as well. Last year we did look at having our house sold, and what they had said is that the only reason they didn't want to purchase it is because there is no access to that house. We cannot live with that. The rest of the house is beautiful. So we have to do something for our own purposes, which is what we're going to do. We sold our other house. We are there full time. We love it. It's a beautiful, beautiful piece of property. And now we want to make this our forever home. And how it is not able to do that. We had a different drawing put on the other side once, and I believe I sent it to Mike. you know, the response is, well, you can make application. Again, how much application do you make before we know kind of what we can work with? When we found Mick, he looked at these different areas. How can we have least disruption and the best use of water planning and soil preservation? This is what he came up with. Again, open to anything. We just know that we cannot age in place in this home as is. We cannot safely access our property, and neither can others. And I think that should be a common right, I think, for everyone. The hardship is not self-created. I think I heard the comment, well, we bought it as is. Say that to a lot of things, but I guess you can interpret that in any way you want as well.
But we bought it as is because we would see others in the neighborhood changing their properties. We didn't think that this would be such a big hurdle in our lives. So that's, you know, that's why we did it.
Yeah. And when he means hurdle, we felt that, well, we just work with the city. I mean, when we had a business in Hudson, we added onto our property 4 times, and I needed variances, you know, and thankfully we were able to get those. And basically because the reasons we needed them were, well, our lines had to be longer because of food safety rules and different types of rules, and the people that sat in your position in that case recognize that, you know, the rules that are in place are not a one-size-fits-all. So we respectfully ask that you work with us to grant us these variances. We're happy to work with staff and whatnot, DNR, to get anything else that we need and make modifications as necessary. But at the end of the day, have safe access to our house now and in the future. Are there any questions for us?
Could you clarify how the proposed change would improve your access right at the point of Cove Road?
Good. What we're proposing is that we would, because we got a little bit back because they resurfaced together a couple years ago or whatever, so there's a big culp right here. So when this has to be kind of be engineered plan, so somebody would go to figure out how it has to be.
Kristen, would it be useful if I pull back to the photo that shows the, like, looking down the driveway?
Well, that's a shared driveway. Do you have your neighbor's approval to modify it?
Oh, they're.
Maybe it's further back.
I sent them the information. Yeah, they're hoping. Down further, they have retaining wall, and so that's what we would look at doing. Yes.
But, yeah.
So,
The part where your neighbor says you just have to gun it, what are you going to do there?
pardon?
The part where your shared driveway meets Cove Road is the place where your neighbor says you just have to gun it, right?
So,
What are you going to do right there to improve that?
well, our goal was to, you know, and all this is what we're thinking, but it's all what everybody would approve, putting a retaining wall in here, and then making sure that we have the appropriate, have it graded appropriately.
You're planning to raise it then?
I don't know if there's, yeah, because like I said, there's a little lip right there that kind of became more pronounced when they just did the last road overlay. So however, I'm not an engineer, however, people would say fill in a little bit here or cut down a little bit here or however, we would do whatever the county, city, the DNR felt was the appropriate way to do it as long as we could.
But you're not asking for our approval for that today, right? Because you don't yourself know what you would do.
Well,
You haven't asked Mr. Mariansky to design that, I take it.
well,
Well,
it's all in one.
I can speak. It's our belief that that alley for a driveway is part of the town of Croix because of the middle of the road over 30 feet or whatever.
Right,
So they,
right of way.
Yep, so they would, as they've been granting our neighbors right to the south of us, ways to modify their driveways to to control the water, to control the slopes, control getting an ambulance back into theirs, we feel that they would help us, or they would instruct us on how to make that Cove Road and our driveway meet a lot better instead of this rise that has occurred because of the Cove Road being tipped a little bit to keep the water from washing down into people's yards.
And that would, I mean, whatever the approach would be, I mean, if, you know, like, oh, brilliant, that's great, that's exactly where we want it, or modifying it over. Again, it goes back to those engineered drawings with how much money do we need to spend if this group is not open to the ideas of, I mean, it's our opportunity to correct all of this, and that would be the goal.
And it would be, you know, and when I looked at it on site, and what we discussed amongst ourselves is the owner here was willing to grant the county a concession to build and pay for MSC wall to adjust the slopes on the opposite side of the driveway. So we could do a mechanically stabilized earth system on this side of Cove Road, which would be the left in the image of private driveway. And that can allow us to manipulate the grades up and down simply just using retaining, which are in precedent right down the curve where it's black and the shadows in the back. So we have that method, you know, if we need it.
How does moving the garage integrate with that plan? Why are they not two separate things?
The site view corridor, if you will, and the garage are two separate things. And we may have to solve them holistically, which I'm fairly confident can be done, mostly through grading here. But, you know, the garage is its own problem. Access to the garage is its own problem. If, you know, we have this one area where, I think Kristen said, you have to gun it. You know, I drive a 2500 diesel truck, so I can't see over my hood. And I don't think you can see over the hood in a small car either.
I can't see over
because
my hood.
you're tipped up trying to see over what's down.
I'm still not understanding why moving the garage is necessary in order to improve the access to Cove Road.
You know, I'm not saying that it is necessary, it's just.
They're separate, completely separate issues.
Okay, thank you. I thought I was missing something important. I thought it was a part of a justification for this moving of the garage.
No, this
But
goes
it's
to,
not.
we
No.
feel that it's an opportunity
It's a different thing.
improve all of that area.
And there's nothing that prevents the town from coming in there and putting riprap on that edge of Cove Road, which is within the roadway, within the easement.
And I called them to come out, and I guess they're asking why. And they said it's St. Croix.
Probably trying to balance a bunch of priorities. Huh?
Well, Troy, as you guys are aware, Troy defers to St. Croix for initial decisions.
With respect to this application,
Yes,
yes, of course, right.
Ms.
But not with regard to their roads.
Right.
Mr. Chair, just a point that I missed adding in my presentation. I did want to note that I had a phone conversation, I think it was just yesterday, with the neighbor to the south at 278 Cove Road, a budding neighbor, Patricia Huber, I believe, and she did express support for the request from the Reesers, and her way of looking at it was that she was happy to see the home occupied on a year-round basis, and felt that to make it livable, usable, what they're doing would be appropriate. So that, in a nutshell, was what our conversation was. I just wanted to make sure that was part of the record.
Now it is. Is there any question for the Reesers that board members want to ask? Okay. Anybody else wish to speak in favor of the application?
I'm Stephanie Reinick. I am a licensed realtor in Minnesota, Wisconsin. I work the St. Croix Valley office in Stillwater. I'm just kind of bounce off what you mentioned about the neighbors saying, and then just kind of tie it into my experience with the home. Year-round living. So when I'm bringing a client to a home, my job is to point out any material adverse facts about how will this home, is there anything that's going to affect your enjoyment or usage of the home? Daily living. I have shown the home to clients, and garage to drive to the house, that road, the stairwell does not work. They mentioned, I can't imagine if it's raining, I got my groceries, my hands are full. What if I have my grandchild? That was the issue with that home. I brought up my teammate, who is also a realtor, and she's been selling on the St. Croix River for 12 plus years, and she mentioned the same. She goes, that's a challenge. So there's a point you said that it doesn't affect the usage of the home, and I would argue that. I think it would, the way it is, it becomes a seasonal home. You can only really use it effectively in the summer for most people. If you want to limit it to someone who's out of town and coming in and just uses it for summer, it's fine. But if you're in there in fall, winter, I don't know. And it does affect the values. And I know value shouldn't be a consideration. At one point you say it shouldn't be a consideration. But then in part B, let's see, 8 bullet point, second bullet point, you said, doing this would affect the property values. Well, which one is it? I say it affects the property value for them now, and having seasonal occupancy affects the value overall for everybody. So again, my experience is I showed it, that was the response. The drive up to the driveway, yep, you gotta gun it. And you just, do a little Hail Mary and hope till you get there okay. So that's just my personal experience with the home. Take it as you will. I don't see how it affects anything when it's barely a net change. Thanks.
I have a question.
Okay.
So when you show a home, this home or any other home, do you inform them that since it's along the river, there could be trouble in trying to change things if that's your desire?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's every situation is unique, as you know, because a lot of these homes on the river are extremely unique. They're, they were built before these current codes, so there's always a challenge. But if you kind of keep within the spirit of the ordinances, in my opinion, I think the goal is to make it a livable space that people can enjoy. While keeping, protecting the riverway. But I do, a lot of people expect there to be stairs to the river or a tram. But getting to your home on a daily usage, how can I get there? How do I live in the home daily, function? That's where this is a challenge. And it does affect the property value. And it affects who's going to buy the home or live in the home.
I can't remember, and I've looked at a lot of houses along the riverway. I can't remember ever a steel driveway. Have you encountered any?
Not in my experience, but I've seen a lot of, where there's a problem, there's usually a creative solution, and
Sure.
It doesn't sound like they're trying to do something that doesn't protect the waterway. It sounds like they're trying to do everything the right way. So that's the kind of person you want living in that property.
And their successors as well, of course.
Exactly.
We make
This
these
is the goal,
decisions
to protect the
forever.
riverway for a long period of time.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Thank you.
Any
Any
other
other questions, sir? Anybody else like to be heard? You probably heard me say earlier in connection with the other case today that our decisions just have to be made on the basis of some kind of imaginary, ordinary owner, not the people who are there with their peculiar problems. We do have one special situation which is impacted by the Americans with Disabilities Act, in which situations with particular people with disabilities may be permitted to have something like a variance for the period of time that the disabled person lives there. Otherwise, we always have to be thinking in terms of our decisions being permanent, no matter who lives there, no matter who their friends are, no matter who their relatives are, no matter what the motivations may be. It's a kind of dispassionate thing that we have to apply. So if we seem to you to be uncaring, that's an unfortunate part of our quasi-judicial role here. Now, do we have anybody who wanted to speak? Oh, did you wish to speak again, Mr. Reeser? Sure.
I just want to say I do respect that. We do not look just at today, just at Tim and I. We look at years down the road. And a lot of people that are buying those houses down there are older and whatnot. But that being said, you also will look back on your decisions 5, 10, 15 years from now. And will anybody look at that property and say, I'm glad I never allowed anyone, because us or the next people after us, to have quiet enjoyment of their home, to have reasonable access to their home, to overcome practical difficulties that exist, not because of something that we have done, but have taken this opportunity to allow people to enjoy this beautiful property on a day-to-day basis, whether it is because it's raining, or because I just did my Costco run, or because I just had hip surgery, which I'm sure is coming down the road, or hopefully because someday I'll have grandchildren, I need to carry that little basket. I think that it is an everyday enjoyment that us or anyone else who's there should be allowed to enjoy. I think that our neighbors should enjoy the opportunity of not having to worry about us backing up into them, and that they have a nice path out to the road as well as an attractive building that is there for their enjoyment. And I also think that people will look at this body and say, is there anything that they granted, did it harm the riverway in any way? Or those 5 purposes about enjoyment, about public, and all those, were those still upheld? And I'm convinced, obviously I have a personal interest in this, that by granting those and working with us to overcome these relief for this practical difficulties, that it will be looked at that this was a wise move to make, because it does meet the intent and the spirit of the ordinance. Thank you.
Ms. Denzer.
I would just remind the board that in the purpose statement for the Scenic Riverway chapter of the ordinance, there is nothing that talks about residential, year-round residential use of the property, and that it is, whether it's seasonal or how much people, different types of people in different parts of their lives, it doesn't speak to that. It speaks to good quality development, protection of the shoreline, protection of the bluff line, preventing soil erosion, pollution, contamination, protecting groundwater and surface water, etc., sanitary facilities, flood damage, etc. So we can certainly provide you that if you'd like to reference it. Thank you.
Were you involved when the board gave approval to build the existing garage? I wonder, at that time, the people who owned the place at that time thought that was the place they wanted it, I presume. Now we have another set of people who think it's in the wrong place.
I don't believe we were. If we look back at the dates and the timeframes in that application, I don't believe any of this current staff were involved, including myself. Thank you.
Do we have, in that very neighborhood, are detached garages on this road and on either side of this house? Am I reading that right from the maps that we were given?
I believe you are. I was looking that up myself.
Yeah.
I was
Ms.
just-
Reeser?
It was originally permitted in 87, originally permitted in 87, and then because of the sort of legal wrangling went through 93 on that garage.
I was just going to add that that was my understanding, that there was some type, we've heard it from the neighbors, they would probably know more than we do, that's why this property was vacated, because when they built this garage, what the neighbors have told us that do live there, although the two weren't there at the time, so please take this with that, that they used to block the driveway, and eventually the neighbors all sued. Maybe Mike can add to this, or I think Jared was also was looking at some background, and that the judge ruled that they either had to pay the other neighbors for their, for having to put up with their dealings, or move. And actually, so that's what resulted in this house being vacant for years. So the garage in and of itself has never been a blessing to that
So
area.
through 1993, somebody wanted the garage where it is. The predecessor owner of your property wanted it where it is now.
Yeah, I have no idea why. They used to be able to drive
They fought
down.
with their neighbors about it.
Yeah.
Find the cheapest spot to put that garage.
Yeah.
It was a Wausau home before that. They didn't spend a lot of money on the property. It was cheap. It was the cheap way of getting a garage. And it was seasonal.
All right, anybody else speaking in favor? Anybody speaking in opposition to this application? Anybody opposed to it? Anybody who's neither for nor against, but has something to say about this application? And we've heard all that the staff wants the board to know at this stage, I take it. Board members, I'm thinking of closing the hearing, taking a 5-minute break, and then making a decision. That agreeable with you? Okay, it's 1:08. Let's resume by 1:15. Okay? It's 1:15. Ms. Denzer?
Chairman Malik, I just wanted to give you two pieces of information. We wanted to make sure in this staff report, it specifically says that the board needs to deny or approve all 4 of the variance requests individually. We just wanted to state that that does not have to be 4 motions. That can be 1 motion as long as you identify each variance within the motion and the reasons why. Just wanted to say that rather than 4 separate motions. You don't have to do 4 separate motions, whatever you decide to do. And also wanted to, we were talking and we wanted to make sure there was some discussion about something that's not on the agenda really, but it was brought up by the applicants regarding their road, the road part of the common driveway, I guess would be the way to put it. And there was a previous board application where the town of Troy did modify a road, and we have since then confirmed and conveyed to the town that they did that without approval of this board, which is not allowed in the Riverway. And for instance, we have another town in the Riverway that has been good about getting their permit approvals from this board before they move forward with any road changes. So any road changes would have to be approved by this board. Just wanted to clarify that in case there was some misconceptions that came out of that previous discussion.
All right, board, we're at decision time. Mr. Telejohn, you're the one most anxious to get out of here and get back to work. This is definitely not an easy one, isn't it? Is it? I mean, there are competing factors here that are tricky, but it's hard to see this as unique. I guess I can't help but think if doing away with a detached garage and attaching the garage to a house becomes approved here, are we going to be flooded with a raft of applications? I don't know that I myself think it's desirable to have a garage attached to the house. I prefer a detached one myself, and I've got an attached one. So. Anyway, is somebody ready to make a motion on this one? Up, down, or modified?
I understand what these folks are going through with these steps and all of this business. I totally do. But you know, I also agree with the DNR when they make the comment here that the concerns and issues identified by the applicant existed when the property was purchased, and the property has maintained reasonable legal use in the past. The trouble is, this property is not unique, and this comes up quite often to this board along the river where folks want to change things, and a lot of the things they want to do, like this applicant, make sense. But when it comes to the river, one thing Wisconsin has done very well is protected the river. And I understood the gentleman talking about there are ways to do things, and there certainly are. But working that close to the slope and the setbacks aren't too bad, I guess. They're 25 to 20, and one is 12 feet. One 5 feet and one 12 feet, but that's my feeling. I think that I feel bad, but I make a motion that we In all of these requests, it's that we deny all of them.
You're moving to follow the staff recommendation then, along with all of the rationale that's been provided by the staff? On
Yes.
all the variances and conditional use permits?
Yes.
I'll second that.
Motion by Nickam, second by Peterson. I think, now we're in discussion, of course. What you're referring to, Mr. Nickam, I think, is that we have personally seen situations where a well-intentioned construction project is fouled up by Mother Nature, and a storm happens just when they're about to close up the building, or they're about to do something, or they put down the grass seed, and then a storm comes and washes the whole works out, and they do their best to restore the slope and seed it again. The sod washes off, despite the best intentions. And then we've seen situations where the first owner does everything wonderfully well, and 2 or 3 owners later, they could care less about maintenance. They're the tubers that Mr. Plord was talking about in the matter earlier today, and so they don't keep things up. And then the next thing, the neighbors are calling the county and complaining. I guess that's the kind of thing you're thinking of, isn't it? Those unintended consequences that fall upon us despite the best intentions. So if we deny people the ability to disturb the soil to do a construction project, we at least avoid those opportunities for harm. Yeah, well, I'm going to support your motion. Does anybody else want to say anything? Yeah.
If it was just one variance, maybe, but there seems like there's so many different variances in this one proposal that I have a hard time agreeing with it also. I mean, anyway.
Yeah, it's hard. There's something about the cumulative effect of numerous variances that makes it somehow seem less desirable. I remember agonizing over what's the significance of a side yard variance a few years back on one where people wanted to change the entrance to the house around to the side yard in order to accomplish some good purposes, and then got to thinking about that. Side yard variances have to do with access for emergency vehicles, in the unfortunate circumstance that you have a fire and need to get a truck around. I think in this case, on the one side, the side where they want to put the garage, they could still with difficulty get a four-wheel drive emergency vehicle around the building, and the other side is already too tight. But this project wouldn't make that worse. Another reason, I think, particularly in the Riverway for side yard variances, is so that the motoring public or the people walking by can have some view of the river beside, alongside the buildings. That usually doesn't apply much in the summer when all the foliage is on, but in the winter it does. But again, these people are not proposing to eliminate the side yard. They're just shrinking it to a small extent. It's a tough one. Any more discussion here? Okay. It's time to vote. All in favor of the motion to follow the staff recommendation for the reasons that are stated should now vote aye.
Aye.
And those opposed should vote nay. And the decision is unanimous. Sorry. Now, let's take up next meeting dates or any other administrivia that we need to deal with. And thank you, Ms. Damus, for sticking with us all day.
You're welcome.
We do our best to bring you some business.
Mr. Chair, I believe we have one item for the October meeting. We had two, but one is going to be delayed till, or possibly not need to be considered. So there's one item for October, the October meeting date. If you go with your usual fourth Thursday, but October 27th, pardon me. And then the other thing I would suggest is you also address when you're going to want to do the November meeting due to the Thanksgiving holiday, because that affects our noticing if we do get applications on October 3rd submitted for consideration at a prospective November Board of Adjustment meeting.
Well, why doesn't Julie take a look at the availability of this room, your staff vacation schedule, and other things that impact that, and let's try email and see if we can work it out. If not, we'll make final decisions at our October meeting, but if we can get them in place before that by email, that's probably desirable.
That'd be good. The 24th of November is Thanksgiving Day, so we probably can't meet that day. So, and the day after, the county's closed. And I guess maybe if you could indicate, would you want it earlier in that week? Or would you want it the following week? Yeah. Or sometimes we've done December 1st and tried to make it a combined date for November, December. Even just, we can certainly email, since there's also a couple members missing, and we will email them, just getting an indication from you of which way you'd prefer to go. A Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the week of Thanksgiving, a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the week following Thanksgiving, or Thursday, December 1st would be helpful.
The Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday following Thanksgiving, I would prefer because of deer hunting.
Perfect. And I do know already that Thursday, December 1st, we would have to ask, I think we could get this room, but I'm not 100% sure, but we could.
It's the start of a new court term.
Yes, so we're not sure.
Jury selection business.
Yeah, that whole thing is always challenging.
I don't have to miss the day of deer hunting either, so it's more convenient.
No, again, it doesn't matter. Frankly, a lot of our staff go deer hunting, so if you made it the following week, it probably would be better.
That wouldn't be a self-imposed hardship, would it?
I don't see
Or
any
solely for
practical
economic gain.
difficulties there.
There you go. Yeah, 28th, 29th, or 30th. We'll look at. Good one, though. And as you know, that usually we have the similar problem with Christmas.
With
So,
December, yeah.
so sometimes it works better to just combine it into a single meeting. It's up to you, of course. But you can think about that. We'll ask you that in October. Okay. In the meantime,
Sounds
Julie
good.
will send it out asking basically, I think, about the 28th, 29th, 30th, or 1st, after she finds out the availability of the room. Thank you.
Okay. You can all speak for yourselves, but I guess I want to say that I do appreciate the staff work that went into these two decisions today, including Heather. You're working with the CDC staff on a timely basis.
We tried.